hey, they helped this become a reality for all of us. So honestly, thank you so much. And if you're interested in joining them, there is no expectation, no obligation. I'm not even asking you to do it. I'm just telling you that you can do it if you head down to the link in the description below. Otherwise, let's just chill out and watch the rest of this episode.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is a war for your mind. I think you understand that. And they put me on trial in a variety of ways. I don't actually care, because I'm built for this. I am not going to watch Charlie Kirk, my friend, be assassinated in broad daylight, watch everyone turn their back on him for money, and sit back idly and allow it to still go. That doesn't work for me. And actually, I am so rested right now and so ready for war that they have, the last 9-10 months was basically me feeling weakened, having watched that in a state of mourning, and feeling like every day I was just sort of coming up for air. They're not going to like what comes next.
The fatigue is real with this one. I have a few words to really summarize how I feel about Candace and her show, and I don't really, mean her show literally. That's only part of it. I'm talking about her show in the all-encompassing sense, if you catch my drift. And if you haven't caught on to the agenda yet, then I'm afraid there's a little chance you ever will. I've said it more than once on this show, right? The whole thing is just poorly scripted drama, and these organizations feed on the fact that people simply can't get enough of it. If you've been here a while, you already know exactly where I stand on this. It takes one thing to go wrong on this one, and it's complete catastrophe. Commercial masks still aren't quite there yet, don't you think? They still look deeply uncanny, but before you write the whole idea off on that basis, remember, these are only the masks we get to see out in the open. I'm sure there's a far more refined process behind these, closed doors we never hear of, the materials, the effects that we're simply not privy to when it comes to government-issue masks.
History class never taught us where anyone pooped, so here we are. Ancient Romans sat side by side in a row in public toilets, no dividers, very close proximity. Everyone shared one communal butt sponge on a stick, but their plumbing was freakishly ahead of its time. Aqueducts carried in fresh water from rivers and lakes, sometimes up to 70 miles away. The water emptied into giant holding tanks. From there, lead pipes supplied bathhouses, fountains, wealthy homes, and farms. Some bathhouses even had hot and cold running water. After the fall of Rome, the bathroom situation rapidly declined. Medieval European castle toilets were basically holes in the wall. These holes dumped poop directly onto moats or pits below. Everyone else relied on chamber pots. They were placed right next to the bed and dumped straight onto the streets. People called gong farmers cleaned it up. But before all that, there was ancient Egypt. The rich had limestone seats over containers of sand. The poor had a wooden stool with a hole in it. Over time, they built canals and reservoirs, even clay and copper pipes, but only for water. So somebody still had to dump the poop into pits by hand. The ancient Greeks also had shared public toilets with running water underneath to carry the poops away. They also built drainage pipes, but out of terracotta. And all these engineering ideas set the stage for Romans, who took plumbing to a completely unhinged level. Thank you.
Somebody out there right now submitted this video because they thought the rest of us needed to see it today.
It will sooner or later, perhaps by accident, do something that is cripplingly dangerous to humans. The old paperclip cliche.
Explain that for people that have never heard the paperclip idea.
That these intelligences involved in machines are literal to a degree we might find difficult to get our brains around. And therefore, someone has said, I'd like you to make as many paperclips as you can.
To an AI, for example.
Yes. A sloppily open-ended, bad definition. But then the machine, which by then has the means to do it, starts to make paperclips, and it keeps on going, and it needs metal, and so it runs out of easily available metal. It starts to collect metal that is not easily available, rips it out of your high-rise building, whatever. It'll make paperclips out of everything, every metal it finds, and destroy the planet in the process.
This is one possibility out of an infinite number of them. AI is literal, it's binary, but that's exactly why it's programmed with guardrails, or at least it should be. I don't think something like this will happen unless it's meant to happen.
The biggest time-lapse of the universe in history has just begun. Here's everything you need to know. On a mountaintop in rural Chile, we built this. It contains the largest camera ever made, 3,200 megapixels. This is the Vera Rubin Observatory, and it's just started its mission. I visited the telescope last year, and let me just say, these videos don't do it justice. This thing is so huge and beautiful in person. Every 40 seconds, it takes a brand new photo of the sky. Every few nights, it captures the whole thing, and it's going to keep doing that for 10 years. This is a single shot from it. That's 10 million galaxies in one frame, and that's just 0.05% of what's coming. Every single night, it's going to find 7 million objects that just changed. Asteroid nobody's ever seen, or stars caught mid-explosion. For the first time in history, we just hit record on the entire universe, and nobody knows what we are going to find. To see my full breakdown of the mission, go watch the full video now.
It's ever so hard to take these space clips seriously when there's so much fluff out there made to look real that isn't. And I'm not saying this one isn't real. There's a chance that everything NASA shows us, or at least some of what they present, is in fact true. Some. But there are other things that definitely are not, or not exactly the way they present them to us anyway.
We've been brainwashed and shamed into thinking that man have always had the reins of power since the beginning of time, when in fact man really only had the reins of power for about 4,000 years. It definitely ended officially with the British Empire having queens as the head of state. Okay, we have Mary, aka Bloody Mary, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, who was also bloody as hell, and somehow these matriarchal empires are staring right at us, right directly in the face, and we can somehow think that this was still a patriarchy when these women were ordering men to die en masse, okay? So we have a witch cult, and now today, fast forward a couple hundred years since Bloody Mary, it's just a pure matriarchy. It's a matriarchy in the sense that men are given some notion that they have power and they get their egos gassed up, but this is the kind of the manipulation that they're given, because it's very easy to manipulate men. And men think that we are so smart and we're so superior and then women could never ever be in charge. Meanwhile, if you look around today, it's pretty obvious. And if you question it, you're shamed as a bigot. If you say, actually, I think women are capable and can rule and have ruled, you're shamed and ostracized as a bigot, even though you're pointing out the obvious. When the queens, the empresses are staring at you in the face, the empress of the biggest empires that ever ruled the entire world are staring directly in your eyes, and you point it out, somehow you're a bigot. We also have these cults of sacred principalities ruled by the mother gods. We're taught that the Greeks, they would conquer a place and they'd have to completely submit to the patriarchy. But these sacred principalities in Anatolia, they had complete and utter control over their counties. They had nothing compared to what other nations had to deal. These sacred principalities of the mother goddess could rule their own principality. So you had Pessinus in Anatolia, which was an autonomous sacred principality, and it was ruled by these priestesses. And all the slaves in that area, they were not owned by a person. They were owned by the goddess. You could not buy and sell these slaves. They were tied to this city. And that's where we're headed. You're going to have sacred principality cities. And what happened? Okay, and it's not a nice time because a lot of the men, they end up as eunuchs. And there's a cult of the eunuch tied to the story of Attis. Okay, and Attis is the perfect example of what's going on with this priestess cult. Attis, what he was, okay, he went against the Great Mother. He went against the Devouring Mother. The Devouring Mother told him what to do, and he said, no, actually, I'm not going to do it. She cast a spell on him, made him go crazy. He castrates himself and then becomes a devotee of this mother goddess and goes to Lydia, which is a very important region in Anatolia as well. And he, again, becomes a devotee and proselytizes her message. And what does that represent symbolically? He went against the Great Mother and was demasculated for it, exiled, and forced to do penance in order to make up for his wrongdoing. So if you go against the matriarchy, you're going to be shamed, henpecked, demasculated, and even worse, you're not even allowed in the Longhouse anymore. You're exiled from the Longhouse, which some could argue is even a worse fate, because now you're on your own and you have to serve them in order to be let back in. They will shame you. They will. And what is going on today? They are revealing that they are doing glamour magic. What is glamour magic? It's a form of lesser magic. If you read The Satanic Witch by Anton LaVey, he goes over this. Lesser magic as opposed to greater magic or theurgic magic is dressing yourself in a certain way to gain certain attributes. They know what gives them +5 stamina. They know what the stones, the attributes are when they're wearing. Everything they wear, they know. They know that the amethyst is giving them this ability, and this stone gives them that ability. Okay, they know. They're experts. And what they're doing with the glamour magic, of course, makeup, we already know. And so what they're doing, now that men are catching on, this is kind of what's going on with the looks maxing stuff. Men are catching on to lesser magic, glamour magic, they'd be shamed for it, they're being shamed for it. Anything to do with wellness or health, men are kind of shamed out of, even by those other males who are upholding the matriarchy, because they know it can benefit them. Obviously, we've seen this. People who are good looking are getting by in society better. Unfortunately, that's just has been proven to be true. And so, what is this? It's also going on with Odin. Odin was called Ergi for doing magic because it was seen as a feminine art. So he was shamed because he knew that this magical craft, so Odin was shamed for doing magic because it was empowering him and it was cast as being shameful for a man to be practicing such arts. They are unmanly. They are not proper for a man. A man has to just be a grug. He can't be going into the occult. He just has to be a sword and shield guy. He can't be a spell sword. But Odin realized being a spell sword is amplifying his spear ability. So of course he's going to be a spell sword in order to get everything in order before Ragnarok happens. So he does that, he gets the runes, he helps mankind, he helps the gods, and though the Aesir originally seemed to be defeated, their descendants ultimately defeat the forces of chaos and start a new cycle. So the Aesir ultimately are victorious because of Odin and him going into something that was deemed feminine. It's the same with Paul Atreides. Why was the Bene Gesserit witch cult so afraid of Paul Atreides? They were speaking of something that he could go somewhere where they could not go. And they were terrified of that. What was that? So the Bene Gesserit witch cult can access their feminine blood memories. They can go into the weird and access the feminine memories of their ancestors. And what Paul figured out how to do through his weirding ways, Prana Bindu, him taking the blue drink. Okay, it's all very symbolic of men going under their own initiation. He accessed the masculine blood memories, and they're terrified of that, and they don't want that, and that's why we're not allowed to talk about real history. That's why we don't go delving into what actually happened, which is what's going on right now, which is the atavistic memory of the witch cult that ruled us. What's going on too with this is that we've been brainwashed into thinking that no, it's just been a complete and total patriarchal rule since day one. And I'm here showing you there's a sacred principality that was semi-autonomous under the Hellenic rule, and even when the Romans conquered it, it was the same deal. These people were feared. Completely and utterly feared. This witch cult was ultimately in control. And then you go to Inanna Ishtar in Babylon. What was going on there? You had the Neo-Babylonian cuck imperium happening, where every woman had to have sex with a man and had to give herself to these sacred orgiastic rites before she got married at least once. So if everyone's a cuck in the total cuck Babylonian imperium, nobody's a cuck. And that's what's happening today now. If everyone's a cuck, nobody's a cuck, right? Welcome to the Neo-Babylonian Ishtar Empire that we're living under. Everybody wants to point, oh, we're living in here. Oh, it's the new Roman Empire. Oh, it's the new this. It's the new that. No, it's the Neo-Babylonian cuck imperium. That's where we're living. It's been normalized. People love showing off their witch handlers. They love it. It's what they live by. They brag about it. They think it's great. And society's morals have basically been inverted so much that this is actually celebrated by people. Oh, you have a witch handler. Wow, great. Yes, everyone look at her butt. This is amazing. And even saying that and saying that this is weird is seen as weird because this is how much the morals have shifted in terms of the Neo-Babylonian cuck imperium that we live under now. Okay, and then you had Cybele and the Romans. The Romans were getting their asses kicked by the Carthaginians, and they ran over to Anatolia and begged these mother goddess cultists to help them. So they brought Cybele's sacred stone back from this previous mentioned city-state, and what they did was they let the cultists in. The cultists taught them their witch magic, and lo and behold, they start winning against the Carthaginians. Is that a random coincidence? Again, we want to pretend the Romans were patriarchal. We want to pretend the Greeks were patriarchal. We want to pretend that all this happened under patriarchy. And meanwhile, they are simping for these Inanna Ishtar priestess cults whenever they can. And they have power. They have autonomy within the rule. Like, let's say you're playing Crusader Kings. You can't tax them the way you want to tax them. You can't call in your retinue from that county because they have autonomy, and you don't want to wage war against them because then you have black magic cast against you, your main character dies randomly or something like that. They feared them. Pretty much going to be back in the open ruling. It's the same with the nationalist reemergence. It's all run by Ishtar. That's why when you see the tall Nords flying around, the man is the passenger princess, and the woman's at the wheel. That's why when they make contact, it's always a picture of a woman. That's why the Vril Society was run by women. Okay, the entire occult apparatus of the Third Reich was guided by a witch cult. What happened there? Have you ever read the book, The Excess Male? What happened with the excess male? It claimed that the real winners of World War II, this is going to blow your mind, the real winners of World War II was Japan and Germany. You know why? Because they killed off the most men. And if you look at their post-boom economy, their post-war boom economy, it's kind of hard to argue against because they were living in absolute, total economic boom. And this book, The Excess Male, its ideal society, by the way, is 2 men for every, the ratio would be 2 men, 10 women. So 5 women for every man. That's what they think would be the best society. And maybe they have a point in some ways because it probably create a lot of strife, but the vehicle to get to that is absolutely insane. And you have to be a complete freak weirdo to want to control the direction of the world to have that outcome. But I think that's what a lot of these, that's kind of what the Reich wanted to do. Probably in the end, they probably wanted to have some crazy breeding society where they could genetically manipulate the amount of men to women ratio, especially under the guidance of the Vril Society. It was a complete psycho world. It was. These breeding factories, this culling, when that dark feminine gets in charge, it's literally the title becomes Bloody Mary. That was the first ruler, Bloody Mary. Blood. I am a real feminist because I understand the viciousness and the violence that women are capable of, and the rule by secrecy and the strings that they can pull and the absolute slaughter that can happen. Anti-feminists think women are, misogynists think women are incapable and think women are just automatons and dolls and they can't do anything and they've just been in the backseat the whole time. No, that's not what happened. That's not true history. True history is Queen Victoria, CC, Bloody Mary, the pornocracy that ruled the papacy since basically its inception was ruled by the Bene Gesserit witch cult. That's why Dune resonates so much, because we all have this unconscious understanding that there is this Bene Gesserit witch cult that has been shaping society for a very long time, but no one's allowed to talk about it because it's taboo. But here's the thing. We're so naive as males. But that's part of the condition. The conditioning is thinking that they are like these sensitive beings that will cry if you do something wrong. But in reality, they can completely shatter empires and civilizations if they get their awry. So that's the thing. Like, this is the real feminism. Okay, if you want to be a real feminist, this is what you stand for. Okay, and like witches, right? Why are they always cackling? Why are they always laughing and flying? Because they're high. They're high on drugs. They put drug paste. They put some sort of Amelia mascara mushroom paste on their brooms, right? And then they ride around. They mount the broom and ride around, and they get high. They get fly. They start to fly around. They're high as a kite, laughing, communing with demons, because women invented black magic. It was women who were wandering around and collecting plants and gathering what they needed. And they were the ones who were cultivating the plants. And of course, they were the ones who found these little communion vessels first. Okay? So we live in a witch imperium. And the thing about it is this, it's not like it's something you can really go against. You can bend the knee. Like, every faction is ruled by them. In reality, you're just another pawn for the witch cult. Same thing on, like, the other side. You think you're standing up for them and this and that, but in reality, they've had power for a very long time. And so that's what I mean. It's just something that I've noticed a lot. There's just a lot of narrative and dichotomies that I just don't agree with, and I see that are constant. Like, the gender war is always framed in like the red pill sense. It's like some douche bro like finding some woman and then like making fun of her. But in reality, like, that situation, you got baited in by her. You got Venus fly-trapped by her to do that. That was the plan all along. You're 7 steps behind already what happened. And you don't even realize it. Because you're being made up to be something that they want you to be made up to be. So you're reflecting exactly what they want you to reflect. And therefore you're losing because you're playing into their hand. Okay? They already knew that you were going to do that. That's why they make these videos, because they know somebody like you will do it, and it benefits them. That's the thing. It's like, like Hauer and these guys, I think they were wrong in their assessments. And look, you could say I'm wrong, but I at least want to give a different perspective here. Because all the rhetoric in the gender war is, we should take their right to vote away. That's not going to change anything. If they can vote or not, it doesn't matter. They're still going to rule over you through their behind the scenes. And I think, okay, did women have the right to vote when Queen Victoria was in power? How do you do the mental gymnastics involved to say that these queens were somehow a patriarchy is absolutely astonishing. But they do it. They'll do it. They'll find this video. They'll do it. They'll do a big dance. They'll do something. Okay. They'll somehow sneak it in and twist history around. Oh, actually, a woman commanding legions of armies around the world, conquering territories. Actually, that's a patriarchy. Even though a woman signed the bill and the death warrants of these cultures and people all over the world who they wiped out. Okay? And that's the mirage. It's the mirage. It's the weakness mirage. It's the non-accountability mirage. That's what. And the more people say they're not accountable, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. That is playing exactly into the hands of the witch cult. You see, we're just pawns. We're all just pawns. This has already been set up to fail, by the way. And it's going to fail. And that when they fall flat on their face and they look like absolute freaks, that was part of the plan the whole time. Okay? This is all going according to plan. Okay, they're going to have their Elysium state anyway. So it doesn't really matter how these things play out on the ground here. They already have their sacred principalities, city-states set up so the rest of the world isn't going to affect it. That's just the way it is. Now, what can you do? Well, awareness helps. Awareness really does help. Because then you can figure out what you want to do. And you can make better decisions and better actions if you figure out what you want to do. And what they want you to do is they want you to be a workhorse. That is the one common denominator. How do these people with diametrically opposed political beliefs somehow have the exact same common denominator that you should be a workhorse? The left and the right. As far left and as far right you want to be. The common denominator is that you need to be working very hard to achieve whatever they want to do. And so my only advice is to stop. Learn to enjoy the time you have. The workhorse brainwashing, going against that and becoming a slack maxer is the ultimate way to rebel against the cult, in my opinion. Because the more you work, the more they benefit. So the best way to do it, I think, anyway, what I do and try to not do is much at all, except the things I want to do, which is like having fun in my life, studying things I like to study, doing activities I like to do. And I don't think people should feel shame if that's playing a video game, if that's going camping, if that's going fishing, if that's shooting a bow or playing a sport. Sports ball gets a lot of flack, which I agree with. But the thing about sports is that it's recreational. Recreation is what they hate. Both sides. That's the common denominator. And how can they have a common denominator? If they're diametrically opposed, well, maybe they're not. maybe both are shadow witch cults, shadow feminism on both sides. I wanted to talk about it, the witch cult society that we live in. And for women, you know, like, I know I have women who listen, and it's just like, okay, women who listen, it's like this. It's like, they know about the witch cult because either, you know, get shamed of the witch cult, or they just have this innate draw of the occult to them. And I'm not saying that magic is bad. I'm saying witchcraft is bad. Because witchcraft is a manipulation type of magic. So how do they overcome it? You know, they're going to have to figure that out on their own terms. That is like an internal thing that's going on with them. That's an internal struggle with them. They're all internally struggling with actual demons, not psychological demons. That's a path they have to walk. And I'm not the one to tell them how to. And I don't really see like, yeah, so just be careful out there. You know, the succubus imperium will take away your energy and your prana. And don't let anyone shame you into... And that's kind of the thing I like. I like the fact that I did not have to pretend to be somebody I'm not in order to get a following. And I'm very appreciative. I could play video games, and I didn't have to pretend to be this work-maxing worker, be... hustle and grind person that everybody else is telling you to be, and to be a good little tax unit for the witch cult of Ishtar. I would give advice, but it's like, you're innately going to be drawn to witchcraft, so what can I really tell you? It's just like a kind of like a thing. I don't know how it can be like... The thing is, like, the Greeks kind of try to channel it with the oracles of Delphi. Okay, well, maybe we can use that to, like, they can, like, remote view the future for us, and we can use it to figure stuff out. But then it didn't really, like, work all the time. And it kind of just splinters off, and then it dissolves into the sacred principalities. And it's like, well, okay, like, I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. So I have the answer for the guy side. Engage as least amount as possible, and be careful for these witch nets that are trying to catch you, and especially in forms of political ideologies and groups and cults and anything. Like, don't get involved in like all groups are always ending up in some orgiastic Inanna Ishtar ecstatic cult. All of them. They just that like any cult. Like the guy seems like, okay, he's in charge, he's getting all these women, but somehow all these women are picking this guy who's a cult leader. Don't join groups, don't join cults, don't get involved. You want to think that people have something for you, like people have your best interest in mind, they see themselves in you. That's just not the case. They see you as an instrument, as a pawn. That's all you are. That's where it starts, and that's where it ends. That's my advice for you guys. When the Buddha, I know, like, you know, some people are like, oh, the Buddha, it's life-denying. The Buddha was life-denying, guys. Okay. The Buddha was not life-denying. The Buddha lived more life than any of us ever could. In terms of sensual pleasure. There was a reason why he was tempted with women by Mara. That was the final test. That's the reason. Because it's like the most powerful thing out there. It wasn't riches, it wasn't an empire, it was an ecstatic orgiastic experience that he denied. That was the final test. That was the reason. Because it's the thing that guys want the most. And some guy like, oh, not me. I'm pure. I'm chivalric. And that's the other thing, chivalry. Oh, God. Same thing. You can't tell me that chivalry wasn't matriarchal or feminist in some manner. Even back in the medieval days, guys were supposed to find a woman to be their muse that they have not even been with And if it required they were to die on the battlefield for that woman, if that is not an energetic exchange, a one-way energetic exchange on the spiritual level, I really don't know what is. I know this video is going to get me in trouble with pretty much everybody, but those of you who understand what I'm getting at here, then you just know it, and you're on the right path. And I appreciate you guys a lot, more than you know. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your experiences are with the witch cult, the Succubus Imperium. What is going on? Is there something to this? Let me know.
Culture is not your friend. Ideology is not your friend. This is one of Terence McKenna's most important ideas. You can hear it in his own words if you watch his lecture on the topic, and it may be the best way to fully appreciate it because of how well he articulates it, but it's an often overlooked yet indispensable idea because it opens a door to a conversation which is of vital importance. That is, the fight for our autonomy and what may best be described as our essential humanness. To understand this idea, we first have to understand the dichotomy between two concepts, novelty and habit. Novelty, McKenna argues, is a fundamental guiding principle of the universe and is what the laws of the natural world tend toward. In modern times, we live in an ever-complexifying world. Scientific advancements, artificial intelligence, convoluted geopolitics, space exploration, sea exploration, rapid environmental changes, an ever-deepening and entangling internet, a Byzantine world of compoundingly diversifying chaos. But the further we look back in time, the simpler things become. And if we look back far enough, only a field of energy. In McKenna's words, as we approach the present, it's as though the universe has undergone a series of crystallizations out of itself of higher and higher forms of organization. And this is what I call novelty. In contrast with this, habit is based in conservatism, recidivism, tradition, and risk aversion. Every aspect of the universe from a macro to a micro scale throughout all of history operates upon a tension between these two factors. Nature, however, leans in the direction of novelty. More than this, it most often tends to preserve that which is novel over that which is not. The extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago is a prime example of this phenomenon of novelty preservation. For the Earth at that time to reach the highly evolved system of plant and animal life working in conjunction that it did, it had taken 4 billion years. In the wake of a single asteroid, all that was erased. But in a mere 65 million years, a relatively short span of time compared to the 4 billion years it took originally, the Earth has been restored to an even more complex and diversified system of plant and animal life than it originally held. This novelty rule is not simply an increase in complexity at a constant rate, but an exponentially increasing thing, meaning this complexity grows faster and faster as it progresses. Although these advancements have typically happened over the course of eons, in recent times they have reached the point of happening within much shorter spans of time, meaning they are humanly observable. Changes happen within the century, decade, year, and month. In the most recent years, some changes can even be seen within weeks, days, and hours. McKenna notes that the universe is expanding faster than the ordinary laws of physics can account for, and a very counterintuitive picture of things is emerging. The universe is not going to fall back on itself in some grand crunch billions of years hence. Rather, the universe is going to expand forever. Forever. But here's the kicker. Faster and But here's the kicker. Faster and faster and faster. Forever. With no barriers and no limitation. This constant, ever-present expansion and hyperdiversification is a key pillar of reality itself. The universe is a constantly sophisticating, eternally unfurling thing, and it will do so forever and ever and ever. Call it God, call it principle, call it whatever you may, this eternity is possibly the most fundamental truth of life. When we make contact with this core reality, we simultaneously reaffirm our connection to our own humanness. To appreciate this truth, one need only observe nature at any level, and one of the best things to assist in this observation, says McKenna, is the use of psychedelic substances. This is one example of where culture intervenes. This is where ideology puts its foot down, and why, if it comes at the cost of something so indispensable to our being, should we allow our cultures to intervene between us and ourselves. Even if it comes at the cost of a sort of alienation from the environment we have become accustomed to, it is certainly worth this price to evade a thought mechanism which is built exclusively for its own self-interest, regardless of whether it is to the detriment of our own beliefs, aspirations, inclinations, and whatever else may interfere with its bottom line. Culture is what McKenna describes as a language-based virtual reality, meaning that through the way that ideas are communicated and presented, reality can be distorted and we can be manipulated. Religion, of course, is probably the most blatant example of this virtual reality, but it also extends into nearly every corner of our lives, including advertising, bureaucracy, social dynamics, career expectations, familial expectations, and broad cultural norms. Culture is, in the truest sense, a virtual reality, a shrunken, distorted simulation of the truth. When we limit ourselves to live within these narrow cultural realities, we diminish ourselves and the human experience. McKenna posits that if a culture had values which it considered strong enough to hold up under intense scrutiny, it would encourage genuine dissection. But as of now, we have rarely, if ever, seen this type of legitimacy, at least on the level of a large-scale society. And why is it that culture shies away from being challenged in this way? Likely because ordinary human consciousness has evolved to be a finely tuned threat detection machine. And culture is a form of group consciousness, or at the least, a mass indoctrination into a uniform worldview. Following this to its natural conclusion, it can be logically deduced that all cultural values naturally lead to the creation of the paranoid personality. This mode of thinking has been the basis of the world we've built thus far, and if it is not reversed quite soon, it may be too late for us. It may already be too late. All around us is the evidence that we cannot carry on as we have to this point. The only question left to us is whether we will change. As McKenna says, if the Sermon on the Mount could have done it, we would have turned the corner then. We've had great teachers, and they were crucified, trampled, ignored, distorted, perverted. The right idea is not enough. What is necessary is the lightning strike of true gnosis, however that can occur. All that, in summation, is McKenna's perspective on culture. What is so significant about this idea is how acutely it gets at the truth. A truth that may be lonely, but the lie which sits in contrast with it goes deep, and that type of prison is forever. To live complacently within our cultures is to willingly subject our spirits and intellect to a watered-down, caged-off, and trivial version of reality. Nor are the various elements which make up a culture authentic pillars of solidarity. They are not, in the truest sense, unifiers. They are dividers. They separate us along lines of race, geography, and religion. They add stronger foundations to an us versus them view of the world. They put barriers between the possibility for development of any species-wide unity by way of arbitrary and frankly mostly foolish qualifiers like food, dress, half-hearted ritual, and unexamined social dynamics. There are a number of ways in which culture and ideology can be broken down into more directly approachable subgroups, but three which I consider helpful are: number one, religion; number two, mythology, or maybe more appropriately, story, as distinct from religion in its function and purpose; and three, what I will broadly call social ritual, accepted behaviors and societal expectations. The prospect of dissecting the separate features of culture is difficult because of how intertwined it all is, and these may not be the best overarching elemental representations of culture and ideology as a whole, but are good examples to probe nonetheless. McKenna mentions religion as a prime example of language-based reality. Religions, of course, offer hundreds of different answers to the same primary questions. Why are we here? How did we get here? Where are we going? Each religion holds different parts of truth, and thus it cannot be reasonably argued that any one religion is the greatest and holds the most singular truth. And if this is so, then there is no reason one should not practice every religion they see fit instead of any one in particular. If a religion truly claims to get at the truth and yet denies you access to a piece of the truth because it comes shrouded in the aesthetics of another culture, then how can this religion claim honestly to have anything to do with truth? What would be a more accurate evaluation is that when a religion does this, it is serving the interest of that previously mentioned greater good, a self-serving culture machine that feeds itself on the dead hopes of outliers. Just like ideology at large, religion serves the interest of the institution which upholds it. Most obvious, of course, is that, in the case of Christianity in particular, the promise of a glorious afterlife deters the potential for working-class rebellion if the working class should recognize that their entire societal purpose for existence is to suffer in the interest of upper-class pampering. But religious control aids social oppression in far more ways than this. Historically, aspects of Hinduism like dharma and karma have been used to enforce the class system, varna, and birth system, jati. Certain Islamic nations and communities, such as Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, are extremely oppressive to women. Under the beliefs of Zionism, an extremist and supremacist distortion of Judaism, a genocide is currently being justified in Gaza. Sri Lankan Buddhism, or Sinhala Buddhist nationalism, supports authoritarian politics and overtly racist and chauvinistic ideology. Across all different cultures and all different nations, religion is used to justify what cannot be validated with rationality, and in the case of its extremes, it is no more than a highly venerated mental virus. This is not to argue against religious feelings themselves, but it is to argue against their structuralization. When a belief system has been institutionalized and socialized, it has been desecrated and perverted. Mythologies are the stories and characters by which we define our ideals and archetypes. In America, it is the cowboy, the rugged individualist gunslinger. In ancient Greece, it was the gods and heroes, the proud and courageous warriors who stand tall in the face of any foe. In a capitalist society, the cowboy, our rugged individualist who will do whatever it takes to get by, is the perfect mythological figure. In an ancient society which was constantly at war, Achilles was a perfect guiding principle to build a class of men who would not hesitate to slaughter whoever stood in their way. So what appears to be a cowboy is actually an antisocial, amoral mercenary whose only loyalty is to self-preservation. And what appears to be a leader of men is a hyper-violent, psychopathic megalomaniac whose concept of peak human achievement is brutality beyond comprehension. And was Achilles a cautionary tale? Yes, in part, but only when his rage did not serve the greater good. These mythologies encode in us our ideas of the perfect form of being, and while hyperbolic, are still emulated subliminally through symbolics and thought patterns. But mythology is more than stories and legends. It is our history as well. Our political figures, our wars, our eras of turbulence and eras of prosperity. Moments of suffering are glorified and attributed with substantial payoff, while moments of prosperity are romanticized and recreated without their blemishes. This is no accident. These things hold up our ideologies. They stand to validate the necessity of our institutions. Especially in America, historical opposition to our system is retrospectively reframed as an expression of our system in function, rather than proof of its inadequacy. Institutional America integrates the stories of its failures as showcases of its virtues in action, as its own natural reorientation toward justice rather than its bitter opposition to it. Our stories teach us how to embody the frictionless citizen. They give us role models for how to play the game without questioning its rules. Social rituals are a somewhat nebulous aspect of culture because they are influenced by every other aspect of culture there is. Religion, mythology, history, geography, language, and the rest. But lacking further specificity, we can examine it broadly as what is expected of us. Mutually understood expectations, whether implied or explicated, are what define us more directly than anything else within our cultures. They map out the trail of our lives and give us clear barriers for acceptable behavior. Sometimes these things are enforced legally, but more often they are enforced interpersonally by either direct criticism or subliminal condemnation. In some cultures, it is a strict obedience to religious codes. In others, it is a rigid deference to familial hierarchy. And in others, it is a total adherence with a political or economic system. Oftentimes, all of the above. Under religious scrutiny, the individual is subjected to strict limitations on what constitutes acceptable human experience. Under familial hierarchy, the individual is subjected to the whim of their ruler, often the eldest male, who more likely than not makes their choices unconsciously based on the values of their culture. Under political and economic control, the individual is limited by an Overton window of accepted belief in opinion and action. These are different methods for the same outcome: control and repression, dominance of the state over the people. Culture and ideology not only control through heavy-handed restriction, however. One of culture's greatest strengths is its ability to dull down, nullify, and smoothen the edges of its people. It is a machine which produces its own most effective participants. Culture is an excuse for the simple-minded and boring. Culture gives the opportunity to approach the world on autopilot. It gives the ability to, rather than interrogate one's own beliefs, excuse, pass off, and deny ignorance or outright stupidity with the phrase, "My culture believes that," etc., etc. All these manifestations of culture tend in the same direction, toward habit. These biases and restrictions and guardrails, they are all formed in direct opposition to novelty. In other words, they fly in the face of natural existence. When we willfully subscribe to the dictates of our cultures and our cultural frameworks exist along the lines of McKenna's definition of habit, conservatism, recidivism, tradition, and risk aversion, we are, in a sense, going against the current of reality itself, a reality defined by McKenna's novelty, infinite expansion and hyperdiversification. If we can accept and live in accordance with this truth, we can find a freedom not held by any existing version of human society. As of yet, we remain bound by habit. Surely we can do better. Surely we can build for a different type of future as we destroy obsolescence without undue sentiment or the terrible, sappy irrationality which keeps us clinging to long outdated fixtures of the past. Surely we can learn from the past without being slaves to the past, so that the way we move into our world's future is dictated by the terrain ahead of us and not by the terrain we've already traversed. This is not all just to say that the past is simply archaic and modern humanity is somehow magically superior. This is not the case. But if we cannot look at our pasts and our ancestors and our intergenerational behavioral patterns as simple objective learning materials and not some strange phallic extensions of our egos, we will never learn and we will certainly never evolve. To move forward with full presence of being, the past is to be destroyed. Not once, but repeatedly and with calculated discipline. The past is the past and is not for us. The ideals carried on the backs of our family tree were for the people who carried them, not us. The only beliefs, the only traditions we should carry are the ones processed through critical thinking. Only when the past is destroyed can it be autopsied and evaluated for its usefulness. Learn the past, understand the past, respect the past, and recognize yourself in the context of the past, but do not attempt to be the past. It is over, it's done, there is no going home. Build something new. Build your own narratives, establish your own traditions, understand that they will turn to dust and do not attempt to pass them on. Build community with consciousness and self-awareness, using your own inventions and not the tools handed down to you by a group of people who do not occupy your same reality. If you do not deny, if you do not resist, if you do not fight back in the arena of ideology against presupposed values, traditions, and ways of being, that fate we ready ourselves and our psyches to meet is a small, dark cube of segregated reality.
Had initiation rites, the Rosicrucians developed systems of intertransformation, the Freemasons built an entire framework of 30